Good afternoon and welcome to the SILA Foundation March webinar on pet insurance. My name is Julie Mendel and I'm the Education Trustee for the SILA Foundation. Before introducing today's speaker, I have just a couple of housekeeping items for everyone. Our webinar is 1 hour in length and it is being recorded. Within the next week, you will receive a link to the recording and a post-webinar survey that we would appreciate you completing. We ask that you mute your microphones and turn off your video so the focus stays on our speaker. We also ask that you put your questions in the chat box. We will be monitoring and posing those questions to the speaker on your behalf, and we'll answer as many of the questions as we can in the time that we have available. Today, we will experience the perfect way to learn about pet insurance. This webinar will fetch the basics of policies and coverage. We'll simplify the rough and tricky terms so they're easy to understand, and we'll dig into the licensing requirements for those barking up the pet insurance tree. So grab your popcorn and get ready for a paw-some time. Today's speaker is SILA's own Barb Gavitt, and while we claim her to be our own, she is actually the insurance lead and faculty vice president at Notman Marks. She has been in the insurance education industry for 34 years and has experience teaching insurance and securities exam prep, writing content, and developing curriculum. She helped establish the SILA education and training subgroup known as SETS and serves as one of the co-chairs. She served on the SILA board from 2013 to 2021, including SILA president in 2020. She was elected back on the board for 2025 as a president-elect because she is that awesome. She has contributed to articles published in the U.S. News and World Report and Pet Priority. So please welcome me in joining Barb Gavitt back to our virtual webinar stage.
Thanks, Julie. So happy to be here. Yep, I love pet puns, so I had fun writing up that little thing. So welcome to the pet insurance webinar. I know this is the one thing where you ask people about their pets and they just beam. You know, people love talking about their pets. And I realize not everybody on this webinar has a pet because you might just be here just to learn more about the actual insurance portion. But, you know, I do want to, provide you information on how the pet policies work and, just take that into consideration. I am a dog person, but I have tried my very best to represent cats as well in this presentation. So the agenda for today, we'll talk about what is pet insurance, what are the types of the plans, coverages, premiums, and who can actually sell pet insurance. So we'll wrap up the webinar talking about some of the regulatory things that make some people's eyes glaze over, but it is part of the puzzle. So let's go ahead and kick it off, and we should have a poll popping up.
It's launched.
All right. So if you have a pet, what type do you own? Either dog or cat or both, or you have a zoo. You have all kinds of animals. Just to see where we're at.
We're at 72. I'll give you guys a few more seconds.
Okay.
I'm bouncing around, letting everybody in from the waiting room still. So this is a good poll breaker, good time for it.
Yeah.
Okay, it's slowing down. I'm going to share.
Yeah, more than half of you have just dogs. We've got 20% with cats. Dogs and cats, 18%. And then my house is a zoo. Yes, I do have friends out there that have pigs and horses and all kinds of other animals. So that is cool. Just getting an idea of where we're at. All right, next screen. All right, so we're going to talk about, what is pet insurance. So let me just give you a few statistics first. The U.S. market for pet insurance has experienced double-digit growth in gross written premium every year since 2019. And from 20 to 21, the highest growth was 30% over the past several years. The total number of pets insured increased 17% from 2022 to 2023. So it has really, in the past, 4 years, really boomed, if you will. And I do think that COVID probably had a lot to do with that. I know a lot of people, bought pets during that time period. And so it does seem as if, as of late, this has really become popular. So exactly what is it? Well, the formal definition, a financial protection against unexpected major vet bills. It does help to cover partial or total medical expense due to sickness or injury. It's very similar to health insurance for people. Basically, this is health insurance for your pet. So we call it pet health insurance. Did you know that the first US policy was issued actually in 1982 by Veterinary Pet Insurance Company? And that was over 40 years ago. So even though it seems like there's been a huge boom just within the past, 4 or 5 years, it's actually been around since the 80s. So not really new, but regulation around pet insurance is newer, I should say. All right, types of pets that are covered. So pet insurance in general is just for dogs and cats. There are 6.5 million dogs and cats insured in 2023. All of the numbers that we have are from 2023 because 2024 hasn't been compiled yet. That will probably not come out until May. Dogs do make up 78.6% of the insured pets, and cats make up 21.4%. But cat sales are creeping up. See what I did there? Typically, exotic pets are not covered, at least in the United States, birds, reptiles, amphibians, small mammals. There are some policies outside of the United States that do have this coverage, but it's pretty rare to see that coverage on pet health insurance in the United States and in Canada. Okay, so I have another little question for you. So I said 1982 was when the first pet insurance policy was issued. So who was the first pet to be insured in the United States? We have Eddie from Frasier, Lassie, Wishbone, Morris. I had to get a cat in here. Comet from Full House, and Stella. What do you guys think? No Googling. That's cheating.
I'm getting ready to cut it off.
Okay, we got 80%
5,
in here.
4, 3, and we can share the results. 2, 1. Here we go.
So based on our poll, we have 45% said it was Lassie. And then from there, it just trickled down, Eddie from Frasier. So yeah, you guys are right. Most of you guys got it right. It is Lassie. That really surprised me because I think of Lassie as being before 1982, like the black and white version. But I guess this is the new and improved Lassie. Lassie number 9, I guess, was the first to be insured. So again, this is for pet health insurance. We're not talking about insuring your pets as actors or actresses. So this is just, that's who was the first pet to be insured. So that's kind of fun. Okay, let's talk about types of pet health insurance policies. So I have some friends on the slides. So these are real pets that I know. So Luna, that is my friend Pam's pet, and Stella is my friend Cindy's cat. So I've got, right off the bat, we've got some cats. All right, so types of policies. There are accident-only insurance policies. There are policies that cover accident and illness. And then there are policies that cover accident and illness insurance with wellness care. All right, we're going to talk a little later about what wellness care is and what the difference is. But these are the 3 main types of policies. Cindy. Yeah, I'm sure she is nothing but trouble. There are also some endorsements that can be added to a pet insurance policy. So for example, you can add wellness as an endorsement to a pet policy, or there are, for example, cancer endorsements. So there are, just like insurance policies for people, there are endorsements that can be added, which might be a little cheaper than buying a separate policy. All right, so for now, we're just going to say that standalone pet wellness programs are not considered pet health insurance. Okay, so these are prepayment service plans that just provide routine veterinary care. So there can be wellness coverages included in insurance, but just that pet wellness program that you might get through your veterinarian is not considered pet insurance. That's basically just a service plan. So we'll say that now. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. Next. All right, so here is an actual true story, and you can't make this stuff up. So here we have an x-ray of Thimble. This is Cindy's grand cat, if you will, and Thimble swallowed a sewing needle. So the irony is not lost here on that. So you can see this is an x-ray of the needle in Thimble's belly. So Thimble's vet bill was $6,000 to remove this thimble. The pet health insurance was covered at 90%. So it was covered at $5,000, I believe. And the needle was removed using a magnet. So Thimble is absolutely fine. But this is a real life scenario. And, this is cats, famous for being mischievous. So this is a real life example of where pet insurance did pay off. So, some of the things that pet insurance covers: injuries resulting from accidents, ingestion of foreign objects. There are so many people that can tell stories about, their pets and things that they have eaten, broken bones, cuts, bruises, things like that are covered. And pet insurance is recommended for pets that are relatively healthy and have an active or a mischievous lifestyle. So, my pet Riley, who was on the cover of the webinar invitation, is pretty calm. She's not. But we did have a dog once that ate an entire bag of Hershey's Kisses, and it was the Easter candy variety. So we saw little piles of colored foil in our house for a little while there. So yeah, pets are notorious for eating things that they shouldn't. All right, next slide. All right, so pet illness coverage. So here we have two brothers, Jumpsuit and Tubman, or Tubby, with us today. All right, so pet insurance illness coverages include chronic conditions. So these are ongoing conditions that do require long-term treatment. Chronic conditions can include, allergies, skin conditions, diabetes, obesity, cancer. So those are just some conditions that are considered chronic and require long-term care. Infections, things like ear infections, eye infections, skin infections, UTIs are common, respiratory infections are common. So those are some types of illnesses covered. Hereditary diseases, so diseases that are passed on from the parent to the offspring, abnormalities that, are genetically transmitted are considered hereditary diseases. And again, allergies, Siamese cats, multiple breeds have allergies or asthma. Hip or elbow dysplasia, that is pretty common with German Shepherds, with Labs, with Great Danes, and with, several breeds of cats. Kidney disease, this is a big one with cats. Persians, Himalayans, epilepsy is another, common hereditary illness. Respiratory issues. I think it's no surprise bulldogs or pugs that have like the short snouts have these types of hereditary diseases. So those are just some examples of some hereditary diseases. Diagnostic tests, things like x-rays, ultrasounds, surgery, of course, medications due to illness. So these are common things that are covered. And some plans will also cover, dental. Just like people, animals, dogs and cats are prone to gingivitis, periodontal disease. So, there are some plans that will also cover dental insurance for pets. Next. All right, policy characteristics. So here we have Callie, who is one of our favorite regulators, Jeff Boffman's dog, and Stuart, which is another one of Cindy's pets. Okay, so characteristics and provisions for pet insurance. Indemnity insurance. Pet insurance is reimbursement insurance. So, if your dog or cat needs to have something removed from its tummy, and it costs $5,000 or $6,000, then you are going to pay that up front, and then your pet insurance is going to reimburse you. So that is how pet insurance works. It's based on reimbursement. There are waiting periods for pet insurance, similar to people health insurance. So these are just for illnesses only. So typical waiting periods. So this is starting when the policy begins. All right. So typically waiting periods are, 10 to 30 days. So that means that if an illness occurs within 10 days or within 30 days of the policy being issued, illnesses will not be covered. And similar to, people insurance, this is to protect against pets that already have a pre-existing condition, right? So we'll define that in a bit. So these plans have deductibles, right? Just like people policies, $500, $1,000 deductible. Co-insurance or co-pays, typically these are a percentage. So that means that, policies may cover 80% to 90% of a loss, and then the pet owner would be responsible for the other percent. They also have annual limits. So your pet may reach its limit. If the limit is $10,000, hopefully you don't have that type of limit. But if that is the limit, the annual limit, then once your pet reaches that, then you are on the hook for the rest of the claims for the balance of that year. And then some policies may have a actual lifetime limit, which is a little bit higher. And that means that once your policy hits that limit, then certain things are no longer going to be covered. So all of this very similar to, people insurance. Next slide. All right, here we have the famous Miss Willow. Willow's last name is Coleman. So this is our friend Sherry's pet. All right, exclusions and limitations. So this, again, some of this might surprise you, but pre-existing conditions are a common exclusion. And a pre-existing condition, just like for people insurance, this is a condition for which, your pet has been treated or has been diagnosed or has had symptoms of a specific condition prior to a policy being issued, right? So this is a big one. So, it's really important. The time to buy pet insurance is before your pet gets sick. And there's certain things, we'll talk about in just a minute that will, lend toward you purchasing a policy. And it could be the, yeah, I agree. I wish everybody's pets could be on in the webinar. So yeah, so there are certain conditions that of course are predisposed. That doesn't mean that your pet is going to get that, but there are things that are common to certain breeds, and we'll get to that. Pregnancy complications and birth are not covered generally. Age limitations, pets are not covered under 8 weeks or over 10 to 12 years, depending on the policy. All right, so there's a sweet spot in which your pet is going to be covered. Now, again, this is just the average. That's not to say that you couldn't find a policy that might cover, your animals for a longer period of time, but it's pretty unlikely that you're going to buy a policy, prior to 8 weeks and after your pet is 10 to 12 years old. Wellness programs, are not covered unless you have a plan that will specifically include wellness, right? So again, there is that wellness program that you can get from your vet, which covers, things that prevent your pet from getting sick. So the programs are not part of the insurance unless you have an endorsement or you buy a policy that does include those coverages. All right. So how much does pet insurance cost, or what is part of the consideration for the premiums? All right, so first of all, your pet's breed. Believe it or not, and maybe you do believe this, purebred pets are more expensive. They are more prone to some of those hereditary, or predisposed conditions versus a mixed breed. So mixed breeds tend to be a little more insurable. It's interesting. They're less likely, I guess the genes have been watered down enough that they don't get all of those, predisposed to have hereditary conditions. The age of the pet and the gender of the pet can increase your premiums. The geographic location where your pet lives. There are certain state regulations required by policies that may cause them to, have a higher premium or a lower premium. And then, of course, veterinary costs can vary based on where in the country you're located. So those are also things that can cause higher premiums. And then chronic conditions, types of conditions, again, like asthma, you have a bulldog that might cause your premiums to be a little bit higher. So I did a search of breeds and the cost, one for dogs, one for cats. I'm going to tell you that there were several sites that I went to, and I got a different list almost every time I pulled this up. So these were the ones that were most likely to be listed on the highest cost, lowest cost list. But there were some surprises that I did see in some of these lists. So for the most part, the highest cost dog that I found over and over again was a Mastiff. And then French and English bulldogs. Now, these were kind of the top 5, and the number 1 might be different depending on what you look at, but these were commonly in the top 5. Irish Wolfhounds, Burmese Mountain Dogs, and Great Danes were the top 5. Now, there was one poll that I looked at, or one list that I looked at, that had a Jack Russell in there, which I had a Jack Russell person. I don't know. That dog was built like an iron horse. So I'm not sure why, but that was only on one, so I figured that was probably just very specific. The lowest cost dogs tend to be Chihuahuas, Golden Doodles, Spaniels, Springer Spaniels. Then there was the Shih Tzu, Maltese, Multi-Poo, all the little poo-poo dogs, tend to have a lower cost, maybe because they're always being carried by their pet owners, or they're in little strollers, or, maybe they just don't see the real dangers of the world. I don't know. And Yorkshire Terriers. So those are common lower cost premiums for dogs. Now for cats, and again, I know very little about cats. So I had to kind of go with, what the websites were showing me. So the highest cost that kept coming up over and over again was a Maine Coon, British short hair, a Abyssinian, I don't know if I say that right, Bengal, and exotic short hair. Those were the ones that tended to be higher cost. Lowest cost, just mixed breed cats tended to be the lowest cost premium. Domestic short hair, Siamese, Ragdoll, and Sphinx tended to be in the lower 5 expensive types of breeds. So just gives you an idea, and that doesn't mean that every single company that issues a policy is going to use these same, breeds, but, that just kind of gives you an idea of where the breeds are as far as their cost is concerned. Another thing that may lower your premium is a multi-pet discount. So we have a friend that has a catio, like a catio, like a patio, only for cats. And this friend actually has 5 cats, but there's 4 pictured here. So we have Peach, we have Stella, we have Tiny, and we have Stuart, not pictured as Fizzy. And I think Fizzy might have a thyroid problem, and we didn't want to body shame Fizzy. Let's just say that. But, if you have multiple pets, some pick for cats, yes. If you do have multiple pets, then there is such a thing as a multi-pet discount. So that's good to know. So that could actually lower your pet insurance premiums. All right, so there are also some additional benefits that can be purchased. So again, this is going to vary company by company. These are just a few that are listed, but when you start, getting into these types of policies, you're going to find that there are some really strange and bizarre things that, pet insurance policies will cover. So, just because it isn't listed here doesn't mean that it's not covered. These are just, the common ones that I ran across. So, I thought I would add some pictures of some pups that are traveling. Um, you know, you see my Riley there. My husband sent me a text and said that, Riley just, begged him to drive the car. And this was his picture of her driving the car. And I said, well, at least we know that she is not going to be texting and driving. So, and then we have Callie there in, her dog seat, her car seat. So, all right, so some examples of additional benefits that are available. Emergency vet treatment when traveling out of the country. It's funny because there are a lot of people policies that don't cover this either, and these are additional costs on people policies as well. The cost of advertising and the cost of a reward offered for a lost or stolen pet. That fascinates me. So if your pet is stolen or is lost, there is a cost to advertise for your pet and a cost for a reward. So that could be covered under your pet insurance plan. The cost of pet care if the pet parent is hospitalized. Another one, similar to having, seniors covered. So if the owner of the pet is hospitalized and they have nobody to take care of the pet, then there is coverage that you can get to pay to take care of the pet. So that's just interesting, that would be a coverage. And then another one, trip cancellation reimbursement if a pet needs emergency surgery. So you have spent $12,000 to take a round the world cruise. And right before the cruise, your pet needs emergency surgery and you have to cancel your vacation. So coverage, you may have coverage on your policy that will cover that cancellation if your pet needs treatment. So I don't know, I found those to be some of the more fascinating, additional benefits available. But, if you are really interested in this, start your Google engines and see what's out there if there's something specific. There are multiple sites out there that will give you a comparison of all of the companies that offer pet insurance and the comparison in premiums and what those coverages are. So it's pretty easy. And when buying pet insurance, it's really important to compare policies. You should compare at least 3, maybe 5 of the policies out there to make sure that you have the coverages that you're looking for and that you look at the premiums and look at things like deductibles, annual limits, co-insurance features. Does it include wellness coverage or doesn't it? Is it illness only? Is it illness and accident? What are the waiting periods? So, just like buying insurance for yourself, it's important to take a look at these policies and do a comparison. Forbes has, a comparison out there that you can take a look at. There's a few different sites out there that I ran across that just give you, a quick snapshot and will show you what your, pet insurance possibilities are as far as coverage is concerned. So, definitely do your shopping out there and take a look to see what exactly are you looking for, to cover your pet. All right. Do we have any questions, Julie, on actual coverages or anything?
We do not.
Okay. Awesome. So we are going to hop into regulatory requirements and a little less exciting for some of us, but it's very, very becoming very highly regulated. Pets are our family members, and I really, like I said, I think during COVID, this really became a big thing. People bought pets and really they became part of the family because you couldn't leave the house. And so, your pets became the center of your world. So, the Pet Insurance Model Act, this started being developed in 2020, through the NAIC. And it took a couple years to vet this and to end up with a model act that was eventually adopted in 2022. All right, so let's take a look at the things that came out of this Pet Insurance Model Act. And before I do that, let me just explain. So a model act is really an act that creates a legal framework, right, for within which pet insurance can be sold in the states that adopt it. So this is not covering every single state. The state has to adopt the Model Act in order for these things to apply, right? So a Model Act is really just like maybe a blueprint of what the states can take and they can adopt to make these, state requirements, right? So Pet Insurance Model Act was designed for state laws to apply to pet insurance policies that were issued to any residents of the state, and state policies that are sold, solicited, negotiated, or offered in the state, and policies or certificates issued for delivery in a state. So if a state does adopt the Model Act, then it will apply to all of those policies. Issued to residents in the state, policies sold, solicited, negotiated in a state, or policies delivered in a state. So there are some policies that some group insurance plans, people plans that you can get pet insurance on, right? That might be one of those incidental or supplemental plans that you can purchase through a group plan. And so you may not get a policy, but you'll get a certificate. So even for group insurance, those certificates that are issued in a particular state that has adopted the Model Act, these requirements will apply. All right, so let's take a look. So policy requirements and conditions. First of all, pet insurance is defined as a property insurance policy. All right, so it's property. So pets are considered your property, right? So it doesn't fall under health insurance or life insurance. So the types of pet insurance policies out there are considered property insurance. All right, so some specific definitions that are covered under the Model Act. So they define terms such as what is a chronic condition, congenital disorders, hereditary disorders, orthopedic conditions, pre-existing conditions, policy renewal, waiting periods, and wellness programs. All right, so in a state that has adopted the Model Act, those are the definitions that have to be included. There's a few others that I didn't mention here, but those are going to be included in a pet insurance policy. All right, so there have to be, some specific disclosures. So disclosures include, exclusions, things that, may be a pre-existing condition, something that's not covered, limitations, waiting periods. If a policy has a waiting period, that has to be disclosed. What the deductibles are, the coinsurance, if the policy has annual or lifetime policy limits. So any kind of exclusion or limitation must be disclosed in the policy. These policies also have a free look period. So again, similar to people policies, lots of similarities. The free look period is the right to return the policy within 15 days. So it has to be at least 15 days. They can always give you more time, but the minimum time limit is 15 days of receipt of the policy to receive a full refund of premiums paid if you return the policy, right? And it has to be disclosed what the process is for returning that policy for a full refund. All right, so that must be included. The waiting period cannot exceed 30 days for illnesses or orthopedic conditions, but it cannot be imposed for losses resulting from accidents. These policies are actually prohibited from having waiting periods for accidents. So remember that waiting period is usually to protect the insurer against pre-existing conditions, which accidents are not pre-existing conditions, right? So any accident that occurs after the policy is issued will not have to follow a waiting period in order to be covered. All right, wellness programs. So again, we've talked about this just a little bit. So wellness programs are defined as a subscription or a reimbursement program, which is separate from an insurance policy and provides goods and services to promote the general health, safety, or well-being of a pet, right? So a wellness program cannot be marketed as an insurance policy, right? That is prohibited. So the insurer or the producer cannot market it as pet insurance. Now, there are wellness coverages that can be included in a pet insurance policy, and that is considered insurance. But for a pet insurance a wellness program, to be included, it may be added as an endorsement, or it may be as, added as part of the policy, but it has to be separated. So in the policy, there has to be a separate cost associated with the wellness program. And the wellness program, it cannot be a requirement to purchase the policy, right? So the company can't say that in order to get the policy, you have to also purchase, the wellness program. Wellness programs similar to like dental programs where you may have, you may pay like a subscription free fee, but then you have to go to a specific veterinarian to get, their annual visits or their immunizations or things like that. So yeah, so pet insurance can offer wellness coverage, which is part of the insurance, but not a separate wellness program. They cannot advertise that as health insurance, pet health insurance.
Barb, we have a question.
Yeah.
So someone's a pit bull owner. I also am a pit bull owner. So curious if there are breed restrictions on pet insurance.
All right, I could not hear you.
Okay, are there breed restrictions?
Breed restrictions. So the breed restrictions are going to be premium restricted as opposed to just downright excluded. So as far as getting a certain breed covered, there's going to be insurance that's going to cover any type of breed. You're just going to pay a lot more for those breeds that have more hereditary conditions, right? So it'll be more in the premium that you pay. And I did go through some of those, hereditary disorders. So that's most likely going to be why your premiums are going to be higher. Yeah. So there are, specific conditions that certain animals are likely to get, but it doesn't mean that they will 100%. So does that answer the question?
I think so.
Okay, awesome. All right. Oops, sorry, I just ended out of the whole webinar. All right, you're back. Okay, so let's talk about the Pet Insurance Model Act provisions for training. All right, so a producer may not transact pet insurance business until they are licensed and have completed the required training. All right, so the Model Act gave us everything as far as what the definitions are, policy conditions are, exclusions, limitations, and what wellness is, and disclosures. But the one thing that the Model Act did not do is specify what type of license a producer has to have. So as far as the insurance producer training is concerned, this is the training once a producer gets licensed. All right, so similar to like annuity suitability training or best interest or long-term care. This is the producer training that they must have before they can actually sell, right? So they can't transact it until they have their license, which we'll get to that on the next slide. And then they've completed the required training. So the insurer must ensure that producers have been trained on the coverages and conditions of its own insurance products. So it's up to the carrier or the insurer to verify that the producer selling this have met those training requirements. And the training must include information on pre-existing conditions and waiting periods for those particular policies, the difference between pet insurance and non-insurance wellness programs, hereditary disorders, congenital anomalies, and chronic conditions, and the rating, underwriting, renewal, and other administrative topics. right? So one of the things that the Model Act says, again, is that, you know, if a policy is issued on your pet before they have a medical condition, so it's not pre-existing, when that policy is renewed, that condition cannot be considered pre-existing because it became, you know, it existed after the policy was issued, right? So that's one of those requirements on renewal, right? So they can't exclude it going forward because it wasn't pre-existing when the policy was originally issued. I think I saw another question out there that have to do with liability.
Yeah, and I think it actually got answered by somebody else in the chain there. So liability being covered under homeowners versus under the health insurance.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, your homeowner's insurance does not cover losses that your own pet suffers, right? So that's where the pet health insurance comes into play. But if your pet bites somebody, that's a liability, and that would be covered under your homeowners. So I think that might be a and that could also be you know, contingent on your breed. I'm not sure if that's as big of an issue as it used to be, but you know, like pit bulls or something, you know, being more vicious. Okay, so let's take a look now at our licensing qualifications. All right, so far, now again, the Model Act was adopted or was signed by the NAIC in 2022. So we're 3 years out. So to date, as of like today at noon, there are 11 states that have adopted the Pet Insurance Model Act. All right, so with, you know, Delaware, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, Maine, Nebraska, New Hampshire, Ohio, Utah, Vermont, and Washington have all adopted the Pet Insurance Model Act. So like I just mentioned, PEMA did not address licensing qualifications. It's leaving it up to each state to decide what type of license a producer needs to have. However, all states do require some form of a license. It may just be limited lines, or it may be a major line, but every state does require some form of a license, right? So in this picture, we have baby kitty. This is one of my coworkers' pets. Baby kitty's name is really Lynx, but he doesn't know that. So he doesn't go by Lynx, he goes by baby kitty, and that's what he answers to. So did I do a good job of making sure that we had a lot of cats in here? I was really trying not to slant it toward animals. All right, so if you are aware of the industry in any way, shape, or form, then you know that uniformity lacks in many areas. Pet insurance is no difference. So here is a snapshot of the states and what type of license they require. So there are 3 states that require, am I on the right slide here? Yeah, that require just a limited lines license. There are 9 that require just property and casualty, so they got to have the full PC. There are 21 states that just require property. This one surprises me. There are 8 states that require just casualty, and I'm not sure what the thought process is, since we know that pets are considered your property, but be that as we will. And it may be states that haven't adopted the act. There are 2 states that will allow a property and casualty license or a personal lines license, one or the other. There's 1 state that says that you must have either a property only or a personal lines. There are 2 states that allow either a property license or a limited lines pet insurance license. There's 1 state that says property and casualty or limited lines. There's 1 state that says property and casualty, personal lines, or limited lines P&C. There are 2 states that will allow any major line of authority. So life only, health only, property, casualty, or personal lines. There is 1 state that doesn't include personal lines. So they will allow life only, health only, property only, or casualty only. And then there is 1 state that does require 1 credit of CE, and before you can actually sell pet insurance. And that's not ongoing, that's just a one-time thing. So if you're wondering which states say what, I do have that on the next slide, just in case you're curious. All right, so here we have the actual list of states. Yeah, Caitlin, pet insurance makes adjuster licensing look like a walk in the park. That is absolutely true. Even though we say that this is crazy. Yeah, adjusters, you still win, Caitlin. Adjuster is still the craziest. All right, but anyway, these are the actual state requirements out there in case you wanted to know exactly which states require what. So, there are some updates based on just recent information that I received hot off the presses. And that these are some states that have pending legislation. So this is not in the presentation in the slides because it is still pending, but it is available to the public if you're following legislative updates. So right now, Florida, Hawaii, New Jersey, and Rhode Island do have pending legislation, right? So this is not passed yet. So, we're just saying it's out there. It's, being tossed around between the House and the Senate, but it has not passed yet. Montana, however, does have legislation that has been sent to the governor. So it's on the governor's desk. It's been there for 2 days, I think, or maybe yesterday. Now their pending legislation just waiting for signature does include 2 hours of ongoing pet insurance CE, right? So this would be the first state to have ongoing required CE. Again, these are states that could have adopted the Model Act, but remember that the type of licensing requirements is not part of the Model Act, right? So they still are, compliant with the act, just the states have their own option as to which route they want to go for which type of license. All right, that actually took less time than I thought. What is our very last slide? This is Hank the Tank. This is my cousin Holly's dog. So she doesn't even know that I stole this picture. Took it off of Facebook, but I thought it was too cute to pass up. So I do want to let you know, if you are a SILA member, and if you're not, you should be. If you are a SILA member, the SILA Education and Training Subgroup, which I am the co-chair of, does actually have a task group that we're working on. The Pet Insurance Licensing Task Group is working on an actual chart that has all of the licensing information on it. And so I see that we just had Maine tell us that there is info that is not correct. And so we did try to look up all of the states, but it should be property, health, or personal lines. Okay, we will get that fixed before Mary Ellen does, send this off as a handout. Thanks for providing that info. And that could have just been a typo that I had. So sorry about that, Maine. All right, so if you are interested in helping us develop this chart for pet insurance, you can sign up to volunteer for that task group. All right, any other questions? We have like 10 minutes left. You guys have been pretty silent. I think you've been having fun in the chat. I haven't been able to read all the content, but it does sound like you guys have had some questions. All right. Rates.
It looks like someone does have a question on rates and premiums.
I may or may not be able to answer it, so give me a shot. You want to put it in the chat or ask? Oh, approval of rate increases. All right, so that again is not, because it's property, it's going to be based on what the requirements are for each state on what those approval increases are. I don't see that this has been something that's been in the news, and I don't know if it's actually quite as regulated as property insurance is in the past, but since it's up to the state to determine rate increases, that's going to be one of those, it depends. But since the data that pet health insurance companies have is mostly recent. You know, I don't even know if they have enough information yet to gauge. I mean, even though it started 40 years ago, it's been growing in double digits over the past, 4 or 5 years. So yeah, I don't have any real solid answer for you on that one. Probably, it depends is probably going to have to be the best answer for that. Any other questions? 5 cats is definitely too many and is exactly the right number. Yes, we love to hear Cindy's stories on all of the cats.
It looks like they got one
Just to
more.
be clear, if your state allows other lines of authority to sell pet insurance, be certain to check to see that matches when getting licensed in other states. So that's a good point. Thanks, Jeff. So if your state, requires any line of authority and you have a lifeline of authority, but other states do not, then they may not reciprocate. So you would not be able to sell in other states. So yeah, thank you for that, Jeff. That is a very good point. Always on a reimbursement basis. Yes. Yes. So put it on a credit card if you have to and pay it off when it gets back. All right. I think we're good.
Who is the largest pet insurer? Last one.
Well, I hesitate to name names. I will tell you that the first pet insurer that wrote that policy on Lassie, that company, veterinarian, let's see, what did that stand for again? Okay. VPI is nationwide now. So I will tell you that, but there are numerous companies out there. And I will tell you that the North America Pet Health Insurance Association, which is NAFIA, is a great source, which is where I got all my statistics from. And I did I'll footnote that source on the first slide. There is 99% of the pet insurers belong to that association. So you can go on their site and you can see all of the insurers that do offer pet insurance. So that is a great source. And they actually that's where I got, like I said, the statistics on, percentages. So they have their annual report. They don't have the 2024 report done, just the 2023, which is the most up to date. Awesome, guys. Thanks.
All right. Well, Barb, thank you so much for sharing all of this information on pet insurance, for being such a friend of SILA and to the SILA Foundation. We really do appreciate you and your time this afternoon. As a reminder to everyone, our webinars are free of charge. They are open to the public, and we appreciate you sharing the invitations to everyone you know. And we would like you to watch for and complete the post-webinar survey and plan to join us next month for a panel discussion on insurance licensing.